Hey creators, welcome back to the club. We're your hosts. I'm Ebony Chapman.
And I'm Akila Friend.
You guys, Father's Day is around the corner and we want to shine a bright light on Black men who are going above and beyond to take care of their families. So we are talking to a creator of a nonprofit that amplifies stories to show that Black men and boys can. Welcome, Brandon Frame, the founder of The Black Man Can. Hey, Brandon.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly honored to be here, and thank you for thinking enough of the work to have me as a guest. Looking forward to sharing and just having this amazing conversation with you. So again, just truly honored. Thank you.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you. I feel like this is a very special episode just because we're solely focusing on Black men. I feel like in the media, Black men kind of get a really bad rap. There's a lot of negative images. There's, people,
or the same images,
or the same images, and not all of them are positive.
Right.
And then it kind of gives this whole idea that, Black men aren't showing up for their families. They're not there to take care of what they need to be taken care of type thing. They're in jail, they're whatever else. So what was the importance to you to start the Instagram page, The Black Man Can?
Absolutely. So I think you brought up some really valid points and I look forward to discussing that. And to start, The Black Man Can, I started in 2010. It started as a blog. So I decided to, or MK Asante is one of my favorite scholars, and he says, once you make an observation, you have an obligation. So I made an observation that Black men and boys need to see positive images of themselves and need to have their stories told. So therefore I had an obligation to create it. And so since then, from 2010, it has grown into a nonprofit organization, a lifestyle brand, a digital media platform focused on creating, amplifying, promoting the stories of what Black men and boys can do. And it's been a wonderful journey to tackle some of the things that you mentioned in a question or giving context to them. That's our intent, is to tackle those issues among many others for Black men and boys.
I mean, there's so much even right there to unpack. And I feel like before we tap into, the fact that you went from a blog to a, Instagram page to a multi-medium to all with the sole purpose of fulfilling your obligation of showing what Black men and boys can do. Like, let's take a step back into some of the stereotypes, some of the imagery, some of the things that were currently out there when it comes to Black men and boys, and even was out there in 2010 when you decided to say enough is enough. Like, how did that really make you feel? And if there was any one moment or, even in society or in your personal life that came about for you to say, you know what, I don't like the imagery that's being portrayed around people like me?
I think there's multiple things. I think just growing up, one, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster when I was growing up. And the only person I could think of growing up for the most part was Stuart Scott and Ahmad Rashad, right? And so like what it lends itself to and why we do what we do is like a lot of times you may ask a young man when we go speak at schools, and even now you can just ask a young man, you go speak in a classroom and you ask me, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? And you may get a fair amount of responses that say, I want to be an athlete. I want to be an entertainer. And first, I'm not upset when I hear that, because if you think about in which ways Black men receive appreciation, if you think about the spaces that they're actually allowed to be vulnerable, it's either sports or entertainment. So if you told me like the places that I could be vulnerable and be celebrated, I would aspire to do that as well. That would be almost any general person, especially within a K through 12 education system that doesn't allow for me to get the identity development to be in other spaces. And so there's that, right? And so when I hear young men say that, what I want to tackle with them is the confidence in which they say it, right? So what I'm not upset that they're aspiring to that, because even aspiring to those things, there's skill set, there's work that you have to do, right? So I can transfer the idea of being those things to other professions, but I don't have young men having the same confidence in those other professions. So when I say I want to be a sports broadcaster, when I say I want to be a video game designer, when I say I want to be a news anchor, I want to be named that profession, there's like a trigger that says I want to do this, but then there's a block in your brain as it shoots off and says, I don't think I could do that. Like, who, Black people don't do that. I don't know any Black men that do that. I don't know any Black men that look like that. When I watch television, I don't see that character being portrayed by Black men on TV, right? And so now I'm struggling with the identity of trying to, what I want to do, but having the confidence that I can actually achieve it, right? And one reason why we have the Black Man Can is so that that happens, and that they can see Black men walking in the different spaces and places that we occupy. And so that lends itself to a story as well, where I'm thinking about the catalyst for the Black Man Can, which started with working with young men on the east side of Atlanta. I attended Morehouse College, and we started a mentoring program on the east side. And we did a whole trip to bringing the young men to Morehouse, and they got to see the school and experience what it was like to be a student. And then we did a debrief afterwards, and we asked the students, you know, what was their thoughts? How do you feel about this experience? And one young man said, you know, the only other place that I could think of that's like Morehouse is prison. And when we asked him to expound upon that, he said the only other place I could think of with 3,000 Black men at one place at one time would be jail. Right. And so this is a sixth grader. Right. And so there again, we see this idea of like, wow, only other place in the world where I, as a sixth grader, right, at 11, 12 years old, thinking about what is the only other place I could see this many Black men in one place at one time is prison, is telling and letting us know that we have to take the images and narratives and stories of all the things that Black men are doing and showcase them at tremendous levels, so that Black men and boys, Black men know that they're not on an island by themselves and the things that they're experiencing and that they're sealing and what they can accomplish, as well as for Black boys to also know that there are all these different ideas, things that they aspire to, they can accomplish. There are Black men walking in those spaces, and we can share the knowledge and best practices and strategies for you to access that opportunity as well.
Yes.
I think that's so amazing. Mm-hmm. You make so many great points be honest with you, I've heard, but I don't really think about, only for the reason, like, I'm an only child. I haven't grown up around like brothers, or like even male cousins are a lot older than me. So it's not like I have that one-to-one comparison or conversation with any younger Black men that are going through these struggles. I mean, I watch a lot of documentaries, but that's really my only point of reference. And so I think that was a great point that you said, yeah, they want to be athletes. Yeah, they want to be something that they're going to be celebrated upon,
and for being vulnerable about. Because it's true, because oftentimes when you hear, and I think through it, you know, I do have two older brothers, and from the flip side, grown up with a mixed bag of brothers and sisters, but when we talk about the idea of folks wanting to go in the NBA or go into sports broadcast, you know, whatever it be, in entertainment, be a singer, be a dancer, it's automatically oftentimes shut down. And I think because a lot of folks didn't really see it from that lens of no, folks really are looking for that opportunity, Black men in particular, looking for that opportunity to really be themselves and be celebrated for being.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right, it's okay. We talk about, like, just think about this vulnerability, Black men. There isn't a Black woman on earth that wouldn't say, well, I would love for my man, or a man I dated in the past, to have been more vulnerable and communicate more and whatnot. If you think about it, the only place it's safe and you're never criticized for crying is playing sports, right? Like, if you cry for a championship or you cry because you lost, that's what you're supposed to do. Now you transfer that off the field and or the court into life. Why are you crying? Man up. You know, men don't cry. Like, it's literally, right? So like, oh, this is the space that I can do that. And then again, you think about being celebrated, you know, like I think it was Jeezy. He was like, you know, you get celebrated like a star on stages, but then off that they put us in cages, you know, and thinking about that thing, right? So it's like, okay, well, yeah, I want to be celebrated. I want people to cheer for me. I want people to think I'm amazing and so great. And not only really those two things happen, like, no questions asked on athletic fields and courts, but we don't give that same space off the court and in real life. And so that aids in the identity development of what's great for me, or what I should aspire to be or feel comfortable doing.
I think it's also interesting. Another piece that you mentioned was that Morehouse story. Like, that is deep. The fact that, you know, a young man, sixth grader came in and said, like, you know, I I couldn't see this for myself. And I think that's really telling of the fact that, because you do have some folks who are out there saying, we've gotten there now. We've talked about it now. Black men, Black women, Black of, whatever, definitely can see themselves in multiple places. They have the resources there. They just have to go out there and Google if they want to do it. And, what is really the reason or the importance of what you're doing. And I think those folks who are saying that are saying it from the lens of like, the idea of the talented 10th, like you are a part of, in a sense, of bubble, because you had the exposure, you had the experience
that you think everyone else
is, is now okay with it. And so I think it's great that even in 2021, this difference still needs to be made, because there's so many people out there that just do not see it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that's what the Black Man Can is about. That's why our mission is what it is. We continue to do the work. We think about that why as we do create programs and manifest ideas into reality.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the building blocks there. I mean, yes, you, like you said, you started from a blog. What was the reason for you to go from, because some folks say, okay, the whole idea of progress over perfection. And I think that's an example of what you've been able to do over the course of the 10 years plus that you've been running it. How did you go from a blog to a website, to an Instagram page, to now videos? Like, what was the reasoning behind each major move, if there was?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I mean, and I think that's perfect, for especially with your audience and just being creators, right? Because that's literally the journey. So first, I will say with that, I'm happy I didn't start the Black Man Can maybe in the era that we're in now with the way social media works and whatnot. Like, only thing available was Twitter and Facebook. Even like the hashtag started as or the Black Man Can started as a hashtag, which then you could say like, oh, you know what, let's do a blog. I'm like, oh, I could tell stories about Black men and reblog news stories from different websites and stuff like that. So we get that. One thing I will say, I think this is a perfect example. The Black Man Can's growth is a perfect example of walking in ordered steps. Because when I got the Black Man Can website, I couldn't get .com. So .com, somebody owned it, right? And so I got .org in 2010, but that's God knowing what my order steps were going to be and knowing this is going to be a nonprofit later down the road, which happened like 6 years down the road, right? That, but I didn't know that. I'm just like, I just want to start a blog. And if you want to start a blog or website, you want .com. That is like your general thought, but God knew where he wanted it to go. And so we started the website, blackmancan.org, and telling stories. From there, I'm like, well, you know what? By 2013, I had told over 200 plus stories in terms of interviews and stuff. And so I said, we need to take all these men and we need to bring them to the boys. And so we started the Black Man Can Institute, which is now called the Building a Better Brother Summit, which is our biggest claim to fame in the nonprofit space, which is our conference that we take to different cities across the country. And young men comes like conference in a box, like you contract us and we come do a conference for your young men. But what I have at my disposal is my mentor network of all these men that I've interviewed or have participated with, who come and do workshops and share their stories. And so we started that. We created the Black Man Can Journal, Define Yourself, Redefine the World, because we thought, we need to have the young men get a tool that we could give away to them at each summit. We started doing this and it's becoming successful. So people are like, how can I donate to that? But from moving from with the that being just a website and then launching this summit, then it was like, well, we need to be a business first, because I was expecting we were charging to do that. So we became an LLC, and then people started saying, can I donate? And so now I'm like, all right, so we need to switch, right? So we become the Black Man Can Incorporated as a 501c3. And then, we trademarked the name The Black Man Can. In like 2016, it's like, we should do an Instagram page. So we get an Instagram page to accompany just the work. Like what it is now is not, again, I didn't start to have all these followers and all that. It's just like, we want to have a place, one sole place where we have stories and narratives and images that showcase what Black men and boys can do. And has grown over time. And then it's like, oh, well, we have that. Let's put out some merchandise, right? So let's, get some hoodies and t-shirts and put them out there. And we do that. So I mean, it's just really been this gradual process of just consistency, of just our why. And then as all these other things become available, it's like, oh, we should do that. Oh, we should do that. You know, for me, the Black Man Can is forever. So it's just like, oh, try this, try that. Definitely failed at some things. You know, we also have like other events that we do, the Power Couple Brunch, which is bringing people together to talk about love and marriage and balancing love, work, and everything in between. We have the King's Roundtable, which is where we bring men together to create spaces for Black men to come and build and have conversation and build brotherhood and be vulnerable. And the list goes on. So we have all these different things. We have a children's book, My First Tie, so that we could do stuff with the little people, fifth and below. It's just all like over time, just seeing different ways to continue that mission and our why. And then it has been successful, and just excited for the next, 10 years, right? We still, we did over from 2010 to 2020. So we were able to do, and now thinking about what we can do from 2020 to 2030 so that the organization can be sustainable and we can make tremendous impact now, not just in the United States, but across the world.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. You have literally, I'm writing down every single thing that you were saying that you guys are involved in and doing. And I'm like, my gosh, like the list goes on and on and on. I have to say, like, first off, the slow build. Okay. Like this wasn't something that happened overnight. So I know like people always want to be the quick fix or like, let's get this going and move it fast. It's a slow build. And I think that that's something really important to understand when it comes to creating a business or any idea. And the thing was, it wasn't forced with you. It was something that came with an idea that had a strong message and that resonated with people. And that's why they connect with you. And that's why they connect with your page. And so that's another thing I wanted to point out, that it's not just like, oh, here's something trendy right now. It was something that was, long lasting, a legacy that you're building. And it was an idea that just snowballed into being more because people saw what you were doing and wanted to be involved and wanted to touch that. So I wanted to highlight that as well. Your marketing. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about. Now, obviously the slow build, people seeing you or whatever, but how were you able to kind of make a little bit of noise and be like, hey, I'm here, like the Black Man Can do it? And where were you finding your interviews and who were you reaching out to? Was it family, friends? Was it, cold reach outs? Like how did you do that to like build that following and that community?
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and this is for anybody looking to create something, is once you start something and your focus is to highlight others, it's just going to grow. It should grow actually organically. And here's why I say that. One, again, when I started in 2010, all I have is really Facebook and Twitter as your major social media. I don't even think anybody listening would say, oh, I was on Instagram in 2010. I don't even know if Instagram existed in 2010, right? So really what it was me being on Twitter, and I would just really read people's profiles. I would join different Twitter chats on different topics, and I was like, oh, okay, this bio looks pretty cool. Like, oh, this guy has a book out or is doing this. And I'm like, oh, I want to find a guy that talks about this or a guy that talks about that. And I would just reach out and say, hey, I would like to interview you for my blog. And people are always honored, especially with the mission of our blog at the time, even now, it's like, yeah, I would definitely love to do an interview with you. So we did that. And then it just, then now that we're putting people out, right, then they share the story on their Facebook and it goes out. Then what happens, right? PR people start reaching out to you. That's like, because that's their job. Their job is to find their client spotlight. So now I'm building relationships with different PR agencies and people because they're like, oh man, I love what your blog stands for. Like, I love to get my client a placement, boom, boom, bang, bang. And then it just kept growing because, like I said, the Instagram page that's 6-7 years after the blog, right? So that's the last 5 years of intentional. And I would say it wasn't even intentional when I first started. I would say you're talking about more like 2017, 2018, saying, okay, I know a little bit about social media, and here's how we're going to strategically kind of use it and what images we're going to post. And that has grown even since then. And, now we have, 700,000 followers, across the internet, which generates about 8 million impressions 8 to 10 million impressions weekly, right? But then that's the purpose of, that's the why, right? So it's been fun to figure out the marketing, and then even the e-commerce, right? And figuring that out, because like the big thing here is looking at like, well, how do we, now we have a brand that represents something to people, and how can we use that to monetize things that can then make the nonprofit sustainable? Well, what happens when we generate a lot of money, and then that money goes towards the scholarships that we offer? It goes towards the summits that we do, right? And then we're also putting that out there in terms of our marketing, right? It's like, oh, you know, we gave out $50,000 in scholarships this year, but that's because people bought hoodies. Well, guess what? I should go buy more hoodies, right? You know, because like I want every single one, but I know that when I'm buying that, I'm helping young men pay for college. I'm helping to provide safe spaces for Black men to be vulnerable, which I know will ultimately impact our community. So.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of that, because you are like Ebony mentioned, like there is a lot of things that you are a part of and are doing, not only from a merchandise point of view, but just a lot of different points of your business. And I want to just highlight, even though this is a nonprofit and this is something that you're doing with a greater mission, it is a business at the end of the day, and it's something that you are very much, it's a mission-based business. And so why did you decide, or how, two parts, how did you decide to know that your audience was ready for a children's book, that your audience was ready for a summit, for, you know, merchandise and hoodies, whatever, you know, a lot of the things that you did? One, how did you decide your audience was ready for those points at different points? And the second piece, how did you decide that that was the answer to whatever question that you recognized that they were seeking, and you know, doing the summits, doing the scholarships, doing the hoodies was really going to amplify your mission as opposed to doing something else?
A lot of it is just sometimes people pushing me, somebody planting a seed inside of me. So like the children's book was because a young man came to a summit, and he said, and he was like in 4th grade, his mom called me and said, my son is coming to your summit, and I can't tell him, mom, no, like he can't come. So, you know, even though he's not necessarily the age that we put on the flyer, I'm like, of course. So he comes and he asked me how to do this with like me and my friends. And then I asked him what he meant. And he said, you know, I'm in 4th grade. Why don't you do this for like 4th graders, you know? And it really comes down to like, everybody's not equipped to handle, like if we bring in 200 middle school and high school boys, that's completely different than 200 4th and 5th graders, or 1st and 2nd, 3rd. Like that's a different level of energy and how you space things out and moving kids along, and how the work content for the workshops. Everybody's not equipped to handle that. You know, early childhood educators are worth their weight in gold, because everybody can't do that. So that's that. But I said, you know what? I pondered on it, and I was like, oh, we could do a children's book. That would be at least one way the organization and myself can do that work and carry some of the same messages and ideas to younger students, right? The merchandise was some of my friends who really pushed me and said, man, you know, you got this opportunity here to do that, and you know, help me figure out what that all looks like and how we can make that happen. And I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. Like, kind of launched that with there was no plan. A lot of stuff, there's like no plan, or like I just kind of do, you know. And then we see, I'm probably more everything is just do it and see what happens, as opposed to figure it out so it could be perfect, or like it's supposed to be this thing when I launch it. It's like, no, the merchandise launched with no ship station, no inventory. Like we didn't even have, we just put it out there, see if people would order, and then figure it out. Like if 50 people order, which kind of what happened, well, now we got to figure out how we get 50 people t-shirts, you know. And then you figure it out. Like the worst that can happen is people say they're going to email you, say, I ordered my shirt X amount of time, when is it going to come? You know, you can work through that. People wait a long time for a lot of stuff. So, and you figure out the systems and structures to do that. So I would encourage any creator that's doing, it's not about starting and it got to be perfect, right? Like, you know, we're on our 5th different website. If you saw the first website, if I started with the website I have now in mind, in 2010, I probably would have never started, right? So I think that that's what holds us up is like, it's going to be perfect. People are going to critique it. That's how you grow. That's how you get better. And so everything, even the summit, it was like, oh, we need to do that. So I worked at a school in Connecticut. I used the school that I worked at. So I'm going to do a conference. I put it out there and people came to the conference. And what the conference looked like then and what it looks like now is completely systematized and it flows. It's like, could do it in my sleep, but that's not how the first one was. But, and I would say people that attended didn't even know all the things that went wrong, right? Like, the basic things, people come into a conference. So they come, they need a place to sit, you need to feed them. They have to have rooms for workshops. Like we all been to a conference. We know the basic tenets of what we're expecting when we go to any conference. If you meet that, you can push forward. So I think I would encourage any creator to just do, and then figure out everything after as you go. So that you can get to the place that you want it to be. But if you try to figure out what that looks like from the beginning, it's not, it'll hold you back. So
that's a word.
1000%. I mean, Akila and I are obviously still in this like building block stage of what our business is and what it looks like. And so we've gone through many transitions from August of 2020 to now we're in May, June. So it's like, we get that. And, as a creator, as an entrepreneur, as like a business owner, you are going to go through changes and it's okay. You have to just be okay with just moving along and also coming up with different ideas, things that like we started with, we were just like, oh, we're just doing podcasts. And then as we continue to grow and kind of figure out our audience and figure out what we want to do, there's like, oh, we want to add this element. We want to add this element. We want to do this. We want to add this to kind of amp up or, give a little bit more context to what it is that we're doing and help people. So that we totally relate and totally get that. And, people who are going to watch this and who are creating or thinking about it, like either you're gone through it or you're going to go through it and you'll get there. Everyone,
there's no in between.
There's no between. Everyone goes there. But Brandon, I really wanted to ask, because there seems to be so many like little hints of amazing stories. Like you're a sixth grader with the Morehouse and like prison reference. You're the fourth grader coming to the summit. I know that there has to be one or a handful of stories that really stick out to you that surprised you in a way that you weren't expecting, or you learned something that day that you weren't thinking that you were going to learn. You have to have some incredible stories. So I would love to just give you a moment to kind of share one or two if you would
the
like.
Imagery of Black men and boys. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share a few that I think are really helpful, or paint a picture of the impact, or the why. They serve as stories as the why, and why you continue to do when you do get frustrated or things don't go the way you want them to, but you remember why you do what you do. One time, one young man, I was revisiting a city that we hosted a summit in, and I ran into a young man, and he was like, "Hey, you're Mr. Black Man Can," and I was like, "Sure, like I'll take that, right?" And I was like, he's like, "Came to the summit, and I really had a great time," and I was like, "That's awesome. That was, it's good to hear that." And he says, at the summit, so at the summits, we teach all the young men how to they receive ties, and then learn how to tie like a double Windsor or a single Windsor knot. That's like one of the big cornerstones of the summit when that moment happens. And so so he says, at the summit, after we learn how to tie a tie, you told us that we have to go forward and teach somebody else how to tie a tie. And I was like, you're right. So he's like, can I tell you who I taught how to tie a tie? And I was like, sure, absolutely. He said, I taught my dad how to tie a tie. And so, I mean, that's just a powerful, experience for him to just share that with me, and for him and his dad to have that experience, right? So I think that that's amazing. With the children's book, one time we had a book signing, and a young man came with his book report. Right. And so because the book had been out already. And so he brought his book to get signed and his book report. And he was telling me about which character, why he liked the book and why Dell was like an important character to him. And I'm looking at a book report, like you don't think about those things when you're creating, and some of the impact that it will have on people. And then some also too, just every day, it's pretty much really hard for me to have a bad day, no matter what happens throughout the day, because people write to the Black Man Can every day to share pictures or share stories or narratives. And so every day I read a story about a man, about how much he loves his wife, and how he just proposed to her. Every day I read a story about a dad talking about his children and what his children mean to him and why we should post this picture. Every day I read a story from a Black man saying something that he's accomplished and would love for this story to be posted, or this image or video to be posted, to represent him and what he's accomplished, because that's what the Black Man Can represents, right? To all these people. And so I would share those because those are like the reminders of the why we do the work, and why we can't stop, right? Can't stop, won't stop, right? We have to figure out all the different ways that we can impact the world in different communities. And even now, because of our growth, because of social media specifically, it has allowed us to get to other countries, right? So these stories that I'm receiving aren't just from the United States of America. These stories come from the Caribbean. These stories come from Africa. These stories come from Europe. And so I think that's powerful. And so it's thinking about how we yield or use that influence to then continue to make change across the world in terms of how Black men and boys are perceived.
I think it's everything.
It really is. I think that's
so sweet.
Amazing to hear that, you really are making an impact and an extreme. Oh, sorry, hold on. Hold on.
Figure it out as we go along.
Right. The thing
we'll just edit that.
It's like too close to the table. So every time the table moves, the thing moves. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're back. Anyways, so I think that's amazing that you have this huge impact on a community of people. I mean,
built a community, really.
Honestly, how does it feel to kind of know that this many Black men, like there's clearly tons. It sounds like you get thousands of emails and submissions on a daily basis. So clearly there are tons and tons and tons of Black men showing up and doing the work. How does that make you feel to know that like you are part of that community and impact, that you are giving these people a space to feel like I can be safe, to know that like I'm going to be given a beautiful, positive love and shine on me to show that I'm doing what it is that I need to be doing as a man, as a Black man?
It feels good. It is what I like to say is ideas. Ideas are spiritual children seated by God inside of us. And he places the people around us and the tools around us to manifest those ideas into reality. And so I'm just thankful that I just follow that, right? That God has placed ideas and thoughts inside of me. And then I have the opportunity to manifest those into reality, because really I'm just a vessel for what he wants to see, throughout the world and throughout our communities, throughout the world and our communities and society, right? And so I'm really just a vessel for that to happen. So I'm just thankful that I walk in those ordered steps. I walk by faith and not by sight. Faith without work is dead. And so just using that as like my little circle of why to continue to do the work. So I'm just thankful that God gives me these ideas, and we try to make it happen.
And I mean, and the fact that, like you said, a vessel, because you are doing the work not only in this entrepreneurial, not even pursuit, but the company that you've built, the community that you've built with the Black Man Can, but it's doubled down in your 9 to 5. We didn't touch on that, but I do want to give a space to do that. The fact that you do have a 9 to 5, you are teaching full time, and then you are building, and not even building, maintaining this 700K plus Instagram community. And that's just on Instagram, not to mention the tens of thousands of other things that you have going on only with the Black Man Can. And I'm not even going to ask you what else you got going on, because I'm sure it's more than those two that you're, dabbling in. But let's talk about how you're balancing the two, and that you are very different than the general entrepreneurs that we hear that are like, quit your day job because I need to focus on the business, on my thing. It sounds like one is helping the other. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely am of a group of people who have 9 to 5s and 5 to 9s. I don't have any intention of leaving one for the other. I'm fortunate that they both do complement each other, but I'm also fortunate that, like, and when you ask me about my why, my personal why, my 9 to 5 is that, as well as the Black Man Can. And so I'm not in a position where I'm like, man, I got to get up and go to work every day to this job, right? My intent is to do both, and like you can have, I don't know, you can have 6-figure outcomes in your 9 to 5 and your 5 to 9, right? And you look at all of them as multiple streams of impact, multiple streams of income, right? And also by having a 9 to 5, that allows for me to operate the Black Man Can in a way that, like, when I talk about making it sustainable, but we can give out scholarships and we can do all that because I'm not worried about it paying my bills, right? Like I don't have to, it's not something I have to think about. So everything that I do is around impact and influence. And so I think that it's just a really interesting place to be. I think that it is possible to do both. Some people would probably disagree with that, but that's okay. I think it is, and that's what I do. And so just managing both. And it's been amazing because I've always had another job over these last 10 years. Like I've, been in the education space. And then, like I said, I've sat in rooms where then people find out that I do the Black Man Can, and they're like, "Oh man, wow!" Like that's because they've heard of it or whatnot. And then at the same time, I might be doing something with the Black Man Can, and they find out like, "Oh, you're now I'm director of social emotional learning." Like, "Oh, let's talk about that." Like the two things complement each other extremely well. And so again, it's just been a wonderful journey to navigate both and create impact and influence, and then also why I don't really think about doing one or the other is that they create different types of impact and influence, right? As director of social emotional learning, I sit at different tables than I would as founder of the Black Man Can, but both give me access to different tables, different people that ultimately increases my impact and my influence tenfold. And so that's what's really important to me. That I'm able to sit at a table around policy, and I'm also able to sit at a table around how do we bring forth better images and narratives around Black men and boys. And so I want to continue to sit at all these different tables because then it allows for me to make the change that I want to see in the world.
Let's break that down for a minute because
I like the fact that they complement each other. That's what I was going to say. Like I like the fact that you have the educational piece, which I'm sure you learned so much about there, that you bring into the Black Man Can.
Right. And so with that though, it's one thing to say you're doing both and both are helping. But let's really dive deep in terms of like, how do you manage your day, your week? Because the tips, the tips, but also even down to like, the hours of the day that you're working on this versus that content, whatever you do to really make sure that you're doing both effectively, because it sounds like you are. And the fact that you're also doing both, I do want to also highlight the Black Man Can right now is for the most part a one-man show. It's not like you have a team of dedicated folks that are working with you day in and day out on a continual basis. So time management, let's just talk about it.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things there. Is what's helpful for me is being a systems level leader, right? And so like if you think of starting with theirs, like that means everything is around systems and structures, right? And so how are you putting systems and structures that allow these things to exist, right? From time management, I would say my day is I go to the gym most mornings. So let's say wake up is about 6:30, 6:45, right? So we'll say, my day is about 7 o'clock. I try to go 7 to like 7, right? Or 7 to 8. And in the mix of that will be meetings, will be Zoom calls because we're virtual. It will be some time during the day where I I have what I try to do with Netflix in terms of peace of mind is Netflix and all the other things that find 30-minute shows. So like my lunch might be, now it's been finding that 30-minute show. So that way, like I may go make a sandwich, go to the bodega or whatnot. I live in New York City. And grab a sandwich, but during that 30 minutes, I'm watching like Blackish, like it gives me my like, calm down, boom. All right, back to the different meetings. And then sometimes my day will end in terms of meetings around like 4:00 or 5:00, but then I'm using the next time to do all like follow-up emails, responses to people and stuff like that. And then again, just finding different systems and structures to make everything happen. And so at the same time, like where I work now at one point was my client for the Black Man Can. So, and then they've recruited me to join the organization as well. So like the Black Man Can has like the work I do now is because of the Black Man Can. Like that's how I got recruited to the job that I have, right? I'm in a doctoral program, right? And the reason why I'm in the doctoral program is because one of the guys that sat on the panel that we did in Boston knew the person who runs the Boston University doctoral program, and that's what got me in, right? So like the Black Man Can is all this stuff works in tandem for my life, and so it has opened so many doors and opportunities, and again, just managing my time efficiently, but also like there's what we're saying around the systems and structures come into play because I just start stuff. I just do stuff as opposed to like, I don't spend as much time prior to doing something to figure that out. I'm like, we're going to do this thing or I'm going to do this thing. And then we do it. And now it's like, now we figure out the systems and structures because I see what worked, what didn't work. Oh, that wasn't a win, but this was a win. And so putting that all together allows me to get to the place of like having really concrete systems and structures that allows for all the actions to take place.
There's a lot of, oh Lord, see, that is the part that, see, me personally, I'm like, I haven't gotten down yet. Like the whole time management thing, because there's a lot of things to just keep up. I mean, at least there's two of us. Unlike you have just the one-man band, at least there's two of us to kind of like hold it down. But even then it gets a little crazy just trying to come up with like the social post and the posting and the email backs. And then we both have 9-to-5s as well. So it's just like that whole balance act. We got to work out. We got to eat.
Yeah,
like,
those 9-to-5s feel like 5 to 9s as well sometimes. So I think you're also in a position where the school day starts and ends, and I don't know how, on the back end, a lot of teachers and folks on the director piece would have to do all that stuff. But it sounds like, I mean, you're making it work, and you're making it work because the people believe in the mission, and you're leading with that mission, and the idea also of failing fast. Not saying you're failing, but that folks with startups oftentimes are like, oh, just do it, just go for it, fail fast, and then you figure it out. But it's easier said than done, and you're actually doing it.
I would agree. It is. Yeah, I like fail fast. I think I always use fail forward as a term that I use. And so yeah, like. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. And like I said, some people don't even know, like some people think, oh, I just do the Black Man Can. And some people don't know I do Black Man Can. They just think I'm, director of social emotional learning for the Urban Assembly. And so, and that's cool, but I'm really excited about, the plans that we have in place for our relaunch of our e-commerce business. And like, again, I think, to the point, so talking about some gems or things to do, like, right, I looked at what we were doing and I'm like, oh, we have some inefficiencies, we have some gaps, and like I want to scale this business so that it can sustain our work. But I saw the opportunity to do that, but then that took the time to like, what we're using all of Q2 to fix all of those things. So that way in Q3, when we come back with everything, all those gaps and those inefficiencies, but I wouldn't have seen those if I didn't start. Right. So, and it's okay to scale back and stop and like, all right, let's rehash this in the right way that can allow for us to flourish, for us to thrive, because that's what ultimately where we all want to be. That's where we as Black people, as Black creators, should be thinking about like, how do we get to that place of just thriving? And that's the goal.
Yeah. I want to know, like, let the people know, like, how do they get involved? Like, you have the donations, we have the summit, like, can people volunteer? What are the age range that you even go for the summit, and how do people apply or get involved?
Yeah, they can reach out on our website, whether we have the blackmancan.com and .org. We're in the process of thinking about what it's like to merge this website into one. I have some ideas around that. Maybe that's a different interview for a different day. And so, but through these different both websites, you can inquire about if you want to volunteer at a summit. If you want to help support, you can donate to the organization. Once again, once we get our e-commerce back up and running, you'll be able to purchase products, which ultimately will support our nonprofit work as well. So yeah, everything's through the website. We're always looking for people who want to donate, or if you're in a community and you're like, oh man, I would love for the Black Man Can Summit, Building a Better Brother Summit to come to my community, you can inquire, through the websites as well. And we start that conversation to make it happen. And we go everywhere. Like, we're not an organization. So when we look at even communities that we've gone to, like we've gone to Syracuse, New York, Wilmington, Delaware, which, like, when you think about sometimes, like, oh, like you're like, I want to do a tour. Like what we used to do, or before Corona, is we do tours every year. So we go to like 5 or 6 cities a year with our summit. And the most we've done in 1 year is like 12, right? 12 summits in 1 year. But we're making sure, like, yeah, we'll go to Atlanta and New York City, and Boston, but we're also going to go to Hartford, Connecticut. We're going to go to Wilmington, Delaware. We're going to go to Syracuse, New York. We want to go to every single community where we are present. Because a lot of times, like, it's not about the glitz and the glamour, it's about the work. And the work is going to not just your big A-list cities, where, there might be media attention and there will be people seeing what you're doing. Like, no, we got to go to places that, like, it's an old manufacturing city with a dying population of people, and Black people are Black men and boys are there, and they're looking for the source of inspiration. They're looking for opportunities. They're looking for tools. They're looking for things that can help them get better, which then ultimately will help their families and their community. And so, if you're listening and you're like, man, this needs to come to my community, we're down for the cause. So that's what the mission and vision is about.
Yeah, I could totally see this being like franchise. Like, you have different, cities, different people with different directors, different states. Like, I could
different
see
nonprofits popping up in different areas,
for
depending
sure.
on it.
I mean, like the new Chick-fil-A, but
not the Chick-fil-A. The Black Man can eat. I mean, it's great. I think it's very telling. Again, your progress, your journey, and the fact that you are just at the very beginning. We're excited for Q3 and all the things that you mentioned. You're getting started, and the fact that you took the time to scale back and really look at the system and standardize your process. And so, with that, we want to know, just like we said, the name of this episode is Creating the Standard. And I think in a lot of ways, we've already shown that the Black Man Can, and what you're doing, Brandon, is doing that. But from your perspective, what does creating the standard mean to you?
Creating the standard means to me, creating a standard means coating my mind with knowledge so it will not be penetrated by foolishness. Setting the standards means defining yourself so you can redefine the world. Setting the standard means valuing brotherhood and always being my brother's keeper. Setting the standard is always being different, being great, and never stopping. Setting the standard is pursuing excellence with impeccable effort. So yeah, I think those things are setting the standard. Or in the story I'll share there, that I always like to share in almost any interview or conversation that I get to have is, so I'm going to ask you, this is going back and forth here, but have you ever had 7-Up?
Yeah.
All right. The reason why it's called 7-Up is because it took them 7 different formulas to get all the right chemicals together to make 7-Up that we drink today, right? Have you ever used WD-40?
Yeah.
Right? WD-40 stands for water displacement, WD, perfected on the 40th try, right? And in your kitchens, have you ever used 409?
Yes.
right? It's called 409 because it took them 409 times before they got all the right chemicals together to make it happen, right? And so all three of us and everybody listening can think about something that on the second time they quit, they're like, nah, I'm good, bruh. You know what I'm saying? That's too much or whatnot, right? But each one of these products has grossed $1 billion, right? So inside of us are $1 billion dreams, $1 billion goals, $1 billion ideas, but it might just take 7 times. It might take 40 times, and it just might take 409 times for those dreams and those goals and ideas to become reality. But if we're consistent and if we're persistent, they can become reality, and those things can manifest into the amazing things that God wants them to be for all of us. And so that's setting the standard.
Creating the standard with Brandon Frame. Come on now. Come on. The Black Man Can. How can we join? Literally, that is yes.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Well, and you know what else is creating the standard? It's us here at the Black Creators Club. We are creating the standard to continue to share and amplify Black stories. So you guys already know what it is. We're already in season 2. So please like, subscribe, and comment. Let us know what you guys think about the episode and all the other episodes. You can always send us leads at the Black Creators Club at gmail.com. Follow us at the Black Creators Club on Instagram. Interact with us, have fun with us, talk to us.
Yes.
We love to hear from our creators and the things that you're creating and things that you are doing. So please continue to support us, and we will continue to support you.
Absolutely. Brandon, this was incredible. I want to make sure if there's anything else that you wanted to share regarding the Black Man Can, anything else that you're helping or you're doing, floor is yours.
Oh yeah, I mean, thank you again for having the Black Man Can on to the Black Creators Club. It's an honor. Even to be identified as a Black creator is, again, it's an honor. The Black Man Can. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and for all those listening, please be ready for our relaunch of the e-commerce store come August, September. I'm really excited about it because we really have taken the time to look at our systems and structures to make sure that the business will allow for our work that we've talked about today to be sustainable. We are a nonprofit, but if we can create a business that is sustainable to the nonprofit, like many companies, right? Why a company has a foundation is because they sell like Travelers has the Travelers Foundation because they sell insurance, right? So we're like, you know what, if we can sell a good amount of product, that can then allow for us to have the Black Man Can nonprofit, which then can go out and impact communities. And I don't have to rely on coming to both of you or anybody listening to say, hey, can you donate $50? I'm not saying that donations aren't great, but it's the capacity and the scaling of trying to get 1 million people to give you $50 is much more challenging than to get 50 people to buy a hoodie. And so we're really excited about creating the systems and structures that allow for us to sustain the organization and not rely on donations or even philanthropic dollars, which a lot of times those dollars aren't coming from people that look like us. So they are already setting the tone of what they think is important for us, as opposed to us saying, this is what our community needs. And thinking about Black men and boys, that's not always the first priority in the philanthropic community. And so for us to be able to create a business that then can sustain that allow for us to really make impact in our communities and on the things and the issues that are really important for Black men and boys. So I just encourage everybody to stay tuned for that relaunch because we will appreciate your support because it will truly make dividends across the communities that we're already in and the ones that we're going to go to.
Absolutely. Love that. And that note on the philanthropic organizations, I promise you that can be an episode in and of itself because there's a lot to unpack. But thank you so much again for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Akiva, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me chatting business, pop culture, and lifestyle at Aquila Friends everywhere. Mainly on Instagram. Ebony, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Ebony Chapman 12, talking everything Black-owned businesses. You guys, thank you again so much for joining us today. We had a great time, a great conversation with Brandon we are honored. You said you're honored, but we're
Yes.
honored to have you and everything that you stand for, the image that you are bringing, the positivity of the Black man, because the Black man can do it all. Okay,
Yes.
they can do it all.
And then some.
And then some. And we're all here for it. We love it. We show love to the Black community and to our Black men. So thank you so much. And remember to always abide by your ABCs.
Always be creating.
See you
Thanks.